What's up, everybody? It's Carpo. Good day to you. So I'm going to try to remember what I wanted to make a video about and get these thoughts out, but there's a couple different things that I really have been thinking about lately. Whilst I delve into different subjects and get on certain tangents and I'm back and forth on ideas, there's generally a question that remains in my mind, which is, what is the most important thing that we should be doing? And it's like between let's say religious and political motivations. Some people might be working towards, say, improving their life as much as possible in hopes of a better afterlife, and some people might be working strictly towards bettering the political views of today or improving. And both of these are valid paths. This is why I really try not to, unless I hear of an idea or somebody fighting for a cause that might not be true or I don't think would be useful or valid, and that's my opinion, of course, those are the only times I generally speak up on things and wonder why people put so much energy into them. But generally I realize that each person has to take their own approach. So we have people who are interested in protesting nuclear power, we have people who are protesting coal and oil production. We have people who are protesting the military, people who protest everything you can imagine. And I don't mean protesting literally, just a metaphor, people who are opposed to certain things. And the causes that are most important tend to sort themselves out over time. In other words, things come and go, like Nibiru is a perfect example. Everybody was freaking out about Nibiru, and all of a sudden it just disappeared off the radar. Well, the whole 2012 thing is over and done. It doesn't mean that we've failed or anything. It just means that people have to be cautious about what they are willing to believe. I had a conversation with somebody earlier. They mentioned on a video how what Nibiru did to them, and to somebody else they knew, and it can suck you in, some of these ideas. So the only reason that I protest certain movements, such as like the chemtrail thing, because I'm not trying to harp on anybody who really wants to make a difference. I'm just seeing so much energy that appears to be wasted, and that's my point. But if it's true, it will sort itself out, and if the things that say I don't think are true end up being true, that will be proven through time. These things have a way of sorting themselves out. So I was thinking about this idea, this notion that I've heard that we need to get back to our roots. And I've really been thinking about this a lot lately. The idea that we need to, that we've lost something that we had. And I think, it's a beautiful notion to think that there was a time when we had it together. If there's any time that people are referring to when they talk about these things, it would be perhaps the time of the Egyptians or the Mesoamericans, the Mayans, and some of these cultures that lasted hundreds of years, if not thousands. They worked, and they seemed to work well, and in retrospect, looking back on it, you think, well, we did pretty good, we appeared to be in harmony with the earth, we had these giant structures that we built, we obviously had some sort of an intelligence. But as to whether we can get back to a root state of mind is completely different from a state of advanced technology. What I'm saying is that, these people still did sacrifices to the gods. They still, while we're working on improving ourselves these days, even back then, they knew that the power was within, perhaps, in cultures, but they still believed in certain blood sacrifices to please the gods for weather or whatever else, other reason. So, not all cultures did this, don't get me wrong, but some of the most advanced cultures did sacrifice. So maybe there's something we don't know today, maybe that was an important component, maybe it was just the intent they had behind it, but what I'm saying is that I don't think in history there was ever a time when humanity had the advanced collective knowledge that we have now, and as well knew how to use it properly and apply it. So rather than looking back and saying, oh, we should get back to our roots, let's just forget about the roots, because we're out in the branches now, and this is where we're going. We have to make a decision. And while we're winding and winding, I think of back in the day, say the 60s, when people were protesting for civil rights and for women's rights and against the war, against injustice, there was maybe a 5-pronged attack on the government, the parts of the government we didn't like, or society in general, people we didn't like, things we didn't like. We weren't going to put up with racism anymore, so yada yada yada. So people could join one of these causes and really, make it appear big. I mean, when people wanted to protest something, they would go protest the war. They'd go out in the streets and march against Vietnam. People say protesting doesn't make an impact, but it does, because you look at what these are things people are still talking about. The protests for the Vietnam War made our government a little more cautious. But anyway, the whole thing with protesting is that you're standing up for something that you believe, and if it becomes necessary to defend that, then you can get angry. People get angry, and there are times when, I'm not going to get into the violence thing, whether that's appropriate, but so what happened now is that all these movements, these 5-pronged movements or whatever, turned into like 1,000-headed dragons. And now we've got people who are fighting fluoride, people who are fighting chemtrails, people who are fighting fracking and fighting oil and coal and mining, and it's endless. It's endless, and it leaves me to wonder what we're going to do about it. So back to the beginning of the video, I was saying, people might have an approach. They might think that something's important, like religion, so they might defend, maybe not religion per se, but a belief in a spiritual self or an afterlife or reincarnation or whatever it may be, which would lead a person to work towards bettering the self and teaching those around them to better the self, which is what I try to do. I'm not teaching anyone, but I'm just saying that's my general philosophy, is to work on yourself. I have many flaws, and I take note of those and acknowledge them and try to work on them, and that's just what being human is, I think. So working on the self, what that does is it gives you a rounder view of the world around you and allows you to instill that in people around you and in your children, and hope the next generation is a little wiser. The other side of that is the materialist aspect, where you believe that everything is just here. We're here for one run, one go around, and some of these, some folks who have certain movements, political movements, and this is really the root of what I wanted to say. Some of these movements aren't based in helping people. A lot of them aren't. They're based in financial interests, and not just for big companies. It's not always big business. It's selfish greed. It's selfish want. We talk about how we're wronged in America a lot. The fact is, what saddens me is I see so many people talking about how bad the education system is and how far we've fallen behind and how screwed over our schools are, and then they're yelling at the government over it. Then the vote comes around and they vote against schools because they don't want a tax increase. And then people are fighting against taxes. They say, we want better schools. We don't want to pay taxes, and what do we do, Those of us who are kind of in the middle, watching people yell from both sides, you don't even want to step in and not get your head knocked off. And that's how I feel about the chemtrail issue. Like, if I peek in and even say one comment, I feel like I get attacked as, somebody who's not aware. And a lot of groups are very, a lot of anti-government groups are so anti-government that they want absolutely no leadership whatsoever. They basically want anarchy, chaos, or self-government, which can work in a smaller society. But we have to work with what we have. This is the framework that we've created. However it might turn out in the end, or however wrong it might be, I see it like this. You can't, if you build a house and it's built wrong, you can't just knock the whole thing down. You have to take it apart piece by piece if you want it to be easier to clean up. You knock the whole thing down, and it takes more time to deal with it. So what we have to do is dismantle this system slowly, but it's not fast enough in this fast-paced society. 10 years ago we started going crazy on the internet talking about all this different stuff, and we're just waiting, like, when's it going to change? And that's really my point. It's not going to change. The movements aren't going to change anything. Nobody's going to change anybody's mind. But people still have to stand up for what they believe. But the ultimate change is going to come from the individuals and those around them, trying to influence them to act better and be better. So with that, I bid you all adieu. Peace. I'm out.